The Toronto Maple Leafs have a massive decision to make, and that decision is regarding Matthew Knies. And reports and rumors are starting to escalate surrounding the Leafs' big decision and whether or not they are going to sign their young player to a long-term deal. So we're going to break all that down and much more on this episode. But before we do, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're a part of the large percentage, about 70% who aren't subscribed. On the road now to 12,000 subscribers. Thank you guys for continued support. It means the world to Darius and myself. But Darius, an interesting part of the offseason now. Again, there's a lot going on. We got Alex Nylander was signed the other day. And now a lot of moving pieces, but one that hasn't been spoken about a ton is Matthew Knies. Obviously, throughout the regular season, he was an up and down. He had a decent year. We'll obviously dive into all that, but rumors are starting to circulate now, and some reports as well, regarding Matthew Knies and whether or not he should get extended. You can see this here saying, with Matthew Knies eligible for an extension, do you think the Leafs should tackle it now or save it for later? And Leafs Update says now the price will only go up. He showed us what he's made of in the playoffs. And there's some other reports, rumors, all these things we're going to dive into, but I just want to get your initial thoughts on this, and if you're watching the video, leave it in the comments as well. Matthew Knies had a very interesting year. There were some times where fans were really excited about him and then a little bit iffy, but then the playoffs, he really was one of the best Leafs players, and obviously they have a ton of superstars on their team. He was one of the better performers, definitely outperformed Mitch Marner, and now he is close to needing an extension.
Yeah, and that was this playoffs, and even last playoffs, I would argue, was one of their best players, and he was a rookie, right? That was the first couple of games that he played. So I love this player. He's an amazing player. I think he's only going to get better. Like, I think his value right now is the lowest it's going to be heading into the future, right? Like, he's only going to get better, and I think he's going to take a step next season. So they can sign him to a contract extension right now if they want. They could wait out the season, whatever they want. They're eligible to do it right now if they want to. And I think that they should, because, as the season goes on, I think this player is going to have a really big year. We saw him take a step last year compared to, what he showed at the end of the regular season and playoffs when he first got called up. And then this year, I think he's going to take a step again because he has that experience playing in the NHL for a full season, almost a full season. He only missed 2 games, and he has all that experience now. He put together a pretty decent season, and I think he's going to be, a new power forward hybrid type of player, right, with the speed, the skill, and also his body type, throwing the body around, stuff like that. So he's a really good player, and I think that they should lock him up as soon as possible, because if they wait till next season, they might be paying him a little bit more than they would this summer, and we'll get into all the details and stuff, but great player. They should probably lock him up.
Yeah, and again, the playoff performers are what the Leafs need, and you look at his season last year, like, the points don't necessarily jump out at you. He had 35 points in 80 games, so a bit under half a point a game, but he's only 21 years old, about to be 22 by the time the season starts. He's a big forward. He's 6'2". Like, he has all the makings of a very good player for the Leafs going forward, and especially when the young players are able to perform in the playoffs the way that he did, it kind of lends credit to the fact that you can see this tweet here. He's going to break out in all likelihood next season. Now, whether that means 50 points, 60 points, 70 points, maybe he has like a big jump like Slavkovsky did last year. There's a lot of ways it could go. But if they lock him up now, the other question is, will Matthew Knies want to get locked up right now? Because he's going to play the side of, okay, maybe he could hold out and get more, or maybe he's going to wait it out and say, hey, I've bet on myself and go ahead and get a bigger deal. Because if you're Knies and you think that you can have a good year next year, you could probably get not double the money, but significantly more money than you would this season when, if we know that his value is only going to go up, I'm sure his agent and himself does as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't see this player signing like an 8-year contract extension this summer, because I think he knows his value is going to go up. Like, if you watched Leaf games last year, there's flashes, in the game, maybe not plays where they score or he gets an assist, but there's flashes where he does things where you're like, okay, like, if he continues to do this and progress at this level, like, this is going to be a really, really good player. And he's going to be, right? Like, I think he's going to take a huge step this year. And it's going to be really exciting to watch. So the Leafs should keep an eye on it. Maybe they sign him mid-season, because I think if they get it or leave it till next off season, then you got the whole playoffs again, and he was great in this year's playoffs, like you mentioned, right? Playoff player, and they need more of those, right? Or guys to step up to that level. He always brings it in the playoffs and makes something happen. So it's going to be interesting. I think maybe right now, looking long term, if you can sign him to 6-7 years, obviously 8 years is the ideal situation, but maybe he's a $5 million player right now, just looking towards the future. I'm not saying, based on what happened last season, based on his his progression and all that. And I mean, he's only 21 right now, right? He's still very young, so he's only going to get better. So he might come in like a $5-6 million player, and if you can sign him long term, that contract's going to age beautifully. So better to do it sooner rather than later.
Now, do you think, Pana popped it up, and honest fans as well, everyone who's watching, 4.5, do you think that's a reasonable deal for either side? Now, for Matthew Knies, he's locking himself up, and it's always the thing for the player, kind of betting against potentially getting, injured and all these things, which hopefully never happens, but it could happen to anybody, and you're kind of getting your bag early. You're getting it locked up for 8 years. But on the other side of things, this seems like a decent happy medium, though 8 years is a long term for really both sides here. That's what fans are starting to say. I just want to get your thoughts on this. 8 years, 4.5. I think ultimately it's going to fall somewhere lower in the years, maybe a similar AAV. And I think Matthew Knies is going to be worth them. And we saw in games 5 and 6, he's obviously making reference to Wendell Clark there. But I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think it could fall somewhere in like the 6 year, $5 million range, something like that. Because if you go 8 years,
It's
like
long.
that contract's going to be fantastic for the Leafs because the salary cap's going to keep going up every season. So on the Leafs side, that's fantastic. But I just don't see the player in his camp wanting to do that, go that long term for that dollar amount. Because if he ends up being a point of game player, very valuable player, then he can make a lot more money, right? So I could see it being a little bit shorter. I think the Leafs would want it to be a long term. I would love it to be a long term. That's best case scenario, and somewhere in maybe, the $5 to $6 million range. Because like I said, if he continues to progress the way he is, and we kind of know what his ceiling is and what he can, produce in the future, then I think, it's going to age beautifully for the Leafs. So I think it's somewhere in there. Although 4.5 would be fantastic as well. I just don't see the player signing for that.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. And who knows if he's even going to sign. Again, we saw Alex Nylander sign an AHL contract. Not that it's relative to Matthew Knies thing, but the interesting thing here is that moves are being made for Brad Treliving. And I think he's trying to get things settled as fast as possible because Nick Robertson, there was at least a lot of shuffling parts. It seems like they're just going to ride it out with Nick Robertson and Mitch Marner. But what they decided to do with Knies is I want to see him locked up at least to some sort of extension, maybe 4 years, 5 years, something in the middle that you can kind of hedge your bets. Because if Matthew Knies, from his perspective, if he goes out over the next few years and has a great few seasons, he's going to be in his prime, 26, 27 years old by the time a 5 or 6 year contract ends. And then he's setting himself up for an even bigger payday, especially as the cap continues to rise. And this is what Knies had to say. He said, I think I ended playing my best hockey, referring to the playoffs. It gives me confidence in the offseason. And hopefully I can carry that over into training camp and hopefully into next season. And we both were obviously making videos at the time when they were in the playoffs and even much before that. He impressed pretty much throughout the entire playoffs. And I think the second half of the year, he played really solid. I mean, he ultimately had a pretty good season. He's a very young player, but I want to see him locked up. And if the Leafs don't get this done, I'm not going to say they're going to regret it because who knows how much Matthew Knies even wants to get an extension done. But I think that it would work well for both parties. And it seems like a lot of young players are getting locked up over the past little bit.
Yeah, and I long term would be best case scenario, I think, for both parties because the player gets paid and it would age beautifully for the Leafs, right? I think that would be best case scenario. But you see it with a team like the New York Rangers right now, too, where they have a lot of their big players locked up long term, and some of their younger players, the same age as Matthew Knies, they're coming up, they need contract extensions, and they're signing them to bridge deals. So I could see that happening with Matthew Knies too, but I think that would be worse off for the Toronto Maple Leafs as an organization because then you're going to have to pay him big money sooner, right? So I think if you could sign him to like 6 years or something like that, even 8 years, best case scenario, of course. Long term would be the way to go with this player specifically, and hopefully they do it soon because, like I said, if you wait till next summer, I only think this player is going to get better. And obviously, it's a contract year. We always know what these players do in their contract years. They go off. Nylander did it last year. Hopefully, Marner does it this year. So we're just going to have to see what happens. But I would hope it would be, before the season starts or midway through the season. Because if you wait to see what he does in the playoffs and he goes off again, could be trouble for the Leafs.
Yeah, let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Do you want to see Matthew Knies extended or do you want to see him maybe hold out and see what happens next year? Let us know. Thank you guys for watching.